The Nanny from a Coven. A story by E.B.'s Heart. My mother just found a nanny for us, Mike told his wife Dami as he was stepping into their home. Really? Dami said happily. She quickly picked her phone to thank her mother-in-law, Mrs. Ajala. She will be coming first thing tomorrow morning. Give her all the support she needs and make her comfortable. I don't want to hear any complaint, Mrs. Ajala warned Dami on the phone. Dami danced happily and informed her office that she will be resuming work next week. But the woman that knocked on her door and introduced herself as Auntie Bola, the new nanny, was not in any way the kind of person Dami was expecting. Auntie Bola, as she called herself, was an older woman in her 60s. How can Mama send someone this old to babysit my baby KC? Welcome Auntie, Dami greeted her respectfully. Auntie Bola came in and refused to sit down. All Dami's pleas for her sit and have a meal first fell on deaf ears. She insisted on taking her bath and keeping her things first. She also refused Dami touching her bag, which was unusually too big. Dami had no choice than to take her to her room. 2 hours later, Auntie Bola came out smiling. "Where is the baby?" she asked, smiling again. Dami brought KC to her and rushed to check what she was cooking. Auntie Bola quickly brought out a black cream that she tied at the edge of her wrapper and rubbed KC all over his body. Dami came back almost immediately and perceived a very offensive odor. "What is that smell?" Auntie Bola looked at her with a frown. "What smell? I only applied the local cream I rub on my feet for pain. I use it whenever I walk too much." Dami collected KC from her and told her the food on the table was for her. "While you eat, let me quickly buy something along the street." Dami lied and left with her baby. "Honey, the nanny is here, but I don't like her," Dami said to her husband Mike over the phone. "What do you mean by that? Do you know what it took my mother to convince her to come and raise our first child? Better accept her, because I won't tolerate any disrespect from you. Or are you now ready to stop working and take care of him? You are only interested in dumping him at a creche, where they will be giving him unprescribed medicine to force him to sleep. I don't know why it is so hard to please you," Mike started shouting on the phone, making Dami to cut the call abruptly. Dami got home to a very cheerful Auntie Bola. She took KC and instantly put him to sleep. When Mike got home, he was happy to see his mother's best friend, Auntie Bola. "Do you know her?" Dami asked, surprised. "Yes, she is Mama's childhood friend." Dami didn't like it. How can her mother-in-law send her best friend to come and babysit her grandchild? A woman who had never married nor given birth before. However, Dami resumed work the next few days, but she noticed that her son was always asleep whenever she got home from work. He would sleep all through the night and will not even breastfeed at all. Dami was not happy that she never meets her baby awake again, because she will try to wake him up, but he would be so sleepy and refuse to wake up. But one day, she suddenly came home to get some documents. She heard a loud music coming out of her house. It sounded like a group of people were beating traditional drums. She rushed in and was wondering who could be beating drums in her home. When she entered her sitting room, she noticed that it was coming from her son's room. She tiptoed and went closer to the room, and the noise was louder. She wanted to rush in, but something held her back to peep first. What she saw made her heart to sink. She saw other women of Auntie Bola's age, dancing round her son who was soaked in a big bowl of dirty water. She pushed the door open, but everything seemed to have disappeared. "Is there a problem? Why is your face like that?" Auntie Bola asked, looking offended. "Where are they? Where is the drum?" Dami asked while hurriedly collecting her baby from Auntie Bola. "Who? What are you even saying?" Auntie Bola asked, looking genuinely confused. Dami ran out of the house, carrying her baby. "Honey, you need to come home now. I saw some people in our house," Dami said to Mike over the phone, crying. By then Auntie Bola has called Mrs. Ajala on the phone to report Dami's rude behavior towards her. Mrs. Ajala called her son to rain abuses on him. "Control your wife. Why is she being rude to a woman that is old enough to be her mother? If you cannot tell your wife what to do, Then I will come there and teach her a lesson. Dami, who was expecting Mike to come and hear what she saw, was surprised to see Mike home, very angry at her. Stop going to work, you said no, call your mother to come, you said your mother has stroke. But you want to rubbish my own mother's effort. Kneel down and apologize to Auntie Bola for being rude to her, Mike shouted at Dami. Dami was the only surviving child of her parents, after losing her two older siblings to sickle cell. She needed to work in order to take care of her sick parents. Her father was amputated when she was 15 due to a bike accident, while her mother had partial stroke. They sold everything they had to send Dami to school. So if Dami leaves her job to be a stay-at-home mom, her parents might die off. So, she was torn in between her immediate family's needs and her aged parents. I saw some women in Casey's room, beating a strange drum and dancing to it. Dami was still talking when a slap landed on her cheek. Stop being disrespectful and apologize to her, Mike shouted on top of his voice. If not, you are leaving this house today, and you are not leaving with my son, Mike said and walked into their room angrily. Dami was so heartbroken, she thought of her child, her job, parents, and went on her knees. Forgive me, Auntie Bola, for being disrespectful earlier. Auntie Bola accepted and asked her to stand up. That night, Dami was very much disturbed and worried. Does it mean I saw and heard nothing? Maybe it was just my imagination. She was in deep thought when Auntie Bola brought back her son. He is asleep now, Auntie Bola said and smiled. When Dami carried her son, she noticed that he was very cold. She tried to wake him up, but couldn't. Something is definitely going on, I can feel it in my spirit, Dami said and wept silently. The next day at the office, she confided in her senior colleague. If you are not comfortable with your nanny, it is better to send her away, Mrs. Uche advised. Dami, who didn't want to tell her colleague that she cannot even send the nanny away, even if she wanted, simply agreed. I will also advise you to get a camera and monitor what is happening in your son's room whenever you are not around, Mrs. Uche said. Dami, who has never thought of camera, was happy for the suggestion. She closed early and bought a camera on her way home. She went straight to her son's room, because she met Auntie Bola outside playing with her son. She placed the camera and tried to open Auntie Bola's room to know what she will find, but discovered that her room was locked. She tried to push the door, but heard Auntie Bola's voice from inside the locked room saying, "Push the door harder, it is not locked." Dami looked outside and saw Auntie Bola rocking her baby to sleep outside and started shaking with fear. "Auntie Bola is outside, who is inside here answering me?" Dami asked while her heart was pounding. "Open the door to find out," the voice claiming to be Auntie Bola's voice said coldly. Dami put her phone camera on and pushed the door open, but Auntie Bola was already behind her with KC in her hand shouting, "Why are you snooping around my room with camera?" Dami was so startled that she threw her phone on the floor, panting. Auntie Bola angrily went inside her room and locked the door. Dami, who was still shocked, then realized she was still carrying KC and knocked again. "Let me carry KC," Dami said and started knocking again. Auntie Bola opened her door and started crying. "I have kept KC in his room. Did you see me carrying him now?" Dami could have sworn she had seen Auntie Bola with her child. But she apologized again and walked away thinking, maybe I am actually imagining things. She rushed to her son's room and saw him sleeping. "What is happening to me?" Dami sat down crying. She then put the camera on. She had wanted to put it on the next day when going to work, but she felt she couldn't wait. That night, Casey cried for hours, but Auntie Bola didn't come out. Mike even knocked at her door severally, but got no response. That was the day Mike started feeling something strange happening. How can someone be sleeping with all the noise their baby was making? And why is she locking the door of her room? Mike kept murmuring these questions, while his heart was boiling with anger. Maybe my wife is right, he thought and went to Dami. "I want you to keep your eyes open. Maybe this is no longer the Auntie Bola that I used to know, but let us watch her again," Mike whispered to his wife. What they don't know was that Auntie Bola was standing behind Dami and using something to scare their baby, making him to cry uncontrollably. When you go to work today, apply for sick leave and stay at home for a few days. Let us watch Auntie Bola. There is something really wrong with her, Mike said to Dami and left for work. Dami was a bit relieved that Mike was beginning to see what she had been seeing. When Dami returned home from work in the evening, the first thing she checked was the camera. What she saw left her jaw dropping. She saw what she had seen before, but this time she saw it clearly. She saw 6 women, including Auntie Bola, dressed in red, dancing around her son while Auntie Bola was beating a big drum. To make it even more scary, they soaked her son inside a bowl of dirty water, kept on the center of the room. Dami was about to take the camera and scream, when she saw the most shocking thing. The person standing beside Auntie Bola brought out a small bottle, blew a dark substance in the air, and another woman appeared from the black smoke. The person who blew the smoke turned around and it was Mrs. Ajala, her mother-in-law. Dami screamed and took her son. She ran outside, while holding the camera, and left to a hotel. She sent the video to Mike and said, "So this is what your mother wants to do with my child?" Mike was so shocked and scared too. He asked for the hotel where she went to and rushed there. Mike called his mother in Dami's presence and rained abuses on her. "So this is what you want to do to me? You want to harm my first child," Mike shouted at his mother. Dami was boiling. She and Mike started planning on how they will expose his mother and Auntie Bola. But when Dami got up to lock the door of their hotel room, Mike stood up and hit her hard with a bottle on her head. She fell down and slumped on the floor. Mike then went to his car and called Auntie Bola, who was waiting for him in the car. "She has passed out. Come and carry the baby. Let me look for who will help me and bring Dami to the car. Hurry up, the ritual must be completed tonight. We don't have enough time again," Auntie Bola whispered to Mike. Mike bribed a hotel staff to help him take Dami to the car to avoid people looking at them. But they didn't know that Dami had sent a message to her cousin brother, Io, who was her only relative living in the same city with her. Io was hanging out with friends at a bar when Dami's text message came in. He showed the text message to his friends, who decided to accompany him. So as they were getting to the hotel, Io sighted Mike and a hotel staff, taking almost an unconscious Dami to his car. Io became terrified and started following them closely with his car. "We have to hurry and finish this ritual before midnight," Auntie Bola said, and was about to go inside with KC when Io beeped his horn. He casually came out of his car and smiled at Mike. Dami was still lying down inside the car. Io walked up to a very nervous Mike and shook hands with him. "I was near your street to celebrate a friend's birthday, and I decided to say hello to Dami." Mike, who couldn't even hide his disgust, shouted, "By this time of the night. This is almost 10 p.m. You cannot be visiting someone by this time unannounced," Mike said and tried to go in. But Io dragged him back and gave him a hot blow on his mouth, shouting, "What did you do to my sister?" Io's friends ran to the car and was trying to wake Dami up. No one noticed when Auntie Bola ran inside with the baby to continue what she was doing with him. Mike's mother belongs to a coven. And in their coven, you must submit your sons, daughters, and your first male grandchild to Coven, for them to eat and drink. All other members have submitted their first grandsons, except Mrs. Ajala. Auntie Bola is their Coven leader, who goes to homes of the Coven members' children as a nanny to carry out the ritual. After submitting the child will fall sick and die before he turns 1 year old. Mike was not aware of this. He was hypnotized by his mother to believe anything she says. His mother told him that a traditional protection rite must be performed on his first son to stop him from dying like his older brother. Mike's older brother was sacrificed to the Coven at 6 months old, and Mike was brainwashed to believe that he died because a protection ritual was not carried out on him. "If my son dies, I will lock you up. Please allow me to save my son with this ritual," Mike said, crying. Io looked at him with pity and shouted, "Which ritual? What are you talking about?" Io asked, trying to catch his breath. "In our family, every first male child must go through this ritual before 1 year old for protection. My older brother died because my father tried to stop my mother from carrying out the ritual. Please don't allow my son to die." They were still talking when Dami woke up and overheard her husband talking about ritual. She used her last strength to run inside, shouting her son's name. "Give me my baby," Dami said while banging on Auntie Bola's door. The door refused to open and it was already past 11 p.m. Once it gets to 12 a.m., the baby must surely die before 1 year old, if they don't carry out this ritual, Mike said, crying when they heard Dami's shout from the inside. Io told his friends to hold Mike down and rushed inside. He used the kitchen pestle to break the door open. The strange drum beat abruptly stopped and all the women there shouted in anger, including Mrs. Ajala. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Ajala shouted. "Do you want my grandson to die?" Dami rushed in and tried to take her son, who was buried inside the dirty bowl of water, but they all joined hands to push her. Io tried to go in, but they were just too powerful. "Keep pushing them away, it is almost time," Auntie Bola shouted at the women. They all gathered together near the door, chanting in one odd language. Dami stood up and stripped herself naked. She went closer to the women and started proclaiming life and victory over her son. "If I am the mother of this child, let all evil power trying to take him from me fall down," Dami said and tried to break into their barricade, but they were strong. Io was still on the ground, groaning in pain. Dami started again. "I gave birth to this child, I carried him in me for 10 months, I have the power to speak life and victory into his life. As his mother, I release the hold this evil gathering has on him." She was still talking while trying to walk in. Just then, her baby started crying. He got up from the water and was screaming. The women saw that the baby has woken up and started crying. "What have you done, Dami? You want to get me killed?" Mrs. Ajala started crying. Dami quickly took her baby, wore him cloth and ran outside. And for the first time in months, KC suckled like he used to. Io slowly got up to look at the women, but they had vanished. He managed to go outside and saw Mike wailing on the floor where they pinned him down. "Leave him, it's over now," Io told his friends. He took Dami and left. The next morning, Mike got a call about his mother's death. He was devastated, but he didn't link his mother's death to the failed ritual. Dami refused to attend her mother-in-law's burial, instead she filed for separation. Mike, who was so certain that KC will die, was waiting to hear the news of his death to prove his wife wrong. But when KC celebrated his 2nd birthday, Mike went home to ask questions. He visited his father's younger sister, who had once accused his mother of killing her own children and husband. His mother had warned him never to visit his aunt. When Mike got there, his aunt hugged him and welcomed him to reality. "I already spoke to your wife Dami and congratulated her for breaking a big generational ritual that would have consumed her. She vowed never to have anything to do with you again." Mike wanted to be angry with her for speaking with Dami, but she hushed him and urged him to calm down and listen to her first. His auntie told him the most devastating story he has ever heard. "Your mother is a witch. She gave birth to 12 children and you are the only one she left alive. She gave the rest to her coven for power and long life. She controls anyone around her, so I don't blame you for doing her biddings. Your father could not even stand up to her until she killed him. So she left you alive, so that you can keep bearing children that will be submitted to her coven. Assuming she succeeded in taking your first child, you and your wife will be under her influence forever, bearing children that will die in her hands before they turn 1 year old." Mike was shedding tears like a child. He could not believe what he just heard. With the help of his aunt, they both went in search of his family. Dami, who could not move on, was leaving her office when she saw both of them. Mike fell on the ground, pleading for her forgiveness. After so many visits with different people that Dami listens to, she forgave him and brought his son home. As a mother, always stand up for your little ones, no matter who is the threat. And when employing a nanny, whether they are relatives or strangers, check them physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.